Hi, I'm Allison and I make stuff, and today I'm going to walk you through a project of mine. A while back I made this needle book made out of felt, so it was sewn together, just kind of easy little project one day, and it's been really good for when I travel to store needles and straight pins, especially like embroidery needles and things like that. But recently I've been getting into bookbinding and I wondered if I could make a needle book that was hardcover. So I made this. This is made using some kind of bookbinding technique, some kind of winging it, and has space for lots and lots of needles. But in the process of making this needle book, I've actually figured out that I wanted to make some changes to the design, and I wanted to make another one for myself with those changes, and that is what we're going to be walking through today. So I'm going to walk you through the materials we're going to need for today, first of which is going to be some cardboard in 2 different weights. This is a piece of cardboard I bought just like as a pack of sheets, but it is kind of the thickness of a cereal box, I would say. And then we have a much thinner piece that is probably more the thickness of a heavy cardstock. You're also going to need some felt of your choice, and either fabric or paper for the outside. Paper would probably look a little neater because you wouldn't have maybe some threads sticking out, but I really like the color combo of these two, fabric and felt. This felt, I believe, is a wool blend, and this is a linen blend fabric. The star of the show is really this 3M sticky paper. It is sticky on both sides, so you peel one half of the protective layer off, stick it to your surface, and then peel the second half off, and it's almost like you've created like a fabric or paper sticker out of, or whatever material you add onto the sticky side of this. So this is really cool, and this is one of the big changes from the previous process. The last needle book I made, I actually used a lot of glue, which is really messy and can actually get on your cover and stain your fabric, so I'm excited to try this out. As for tools, we're going to need some pretty basic ones. We have a ruler. Yours does not have to be as dirty and gross as mine. I have some regular sewing thread, a sewing needle. This is an awl, so it's like a pointy stick basically. You can use other pointy objects to in place of this. When we get to that, a thick, like really thick leather embroidery needle could also help make the holes we need at that step. And then you're going to need a pair of scissors to cut your fabric and paper with. I almost forgot, you're going to also need an X-Acto knife, and you're probably going to want a cutting surface, like a cutting mat, to cut your cardboard out. I use an X-Acto knife for the thickness of my cardboard, but you might actually get away with just using scissors for yours. So to start out, we're going to cut out our materials to our desired sizes. So you're going to want to cut out your thicker cardboard into the following dimensions. We're also going to cut out a little spacer piece that's going to be kind of thin. This piece we're not going to actually end up having in the final product, but we're going to use it to lay out our pieces and the right spacing eventually. Out of our fancy sticker paper, we're going to want to cut out the following dimensions. Out of the thinner cardboard, we're just going to need one small piece. And the felt, we're going to cut 2 pieces, the same size in these dimensions. Now, I can't remember exactly what this felt is made of. I'm pretty sure it's a wool blend. I bought it on Etsy. I'll try to see if I can find a link for below. But I was very careful and I ironed these into little pages. So I've already gone ahead and taken my fabric and I've stuck the sticker paper to the fabric and then ended up cutting around the edges to create these fabric stickers. So in this project we're using 2 pieces of felt to create our pages, which would end up looking like 4 pages. In bookbinding terms, these sets of pages would be called signatures. So in this case we have 2 signatures that are each just 1 piece of felt. Each of these signatures are going to be sewn separately onto our spine. So on our thinner piece of cardboard, I'm going to draw a line that is 1/8 from the edge of either side. I'm also going to draw a line that is 1/4 inch from the top and bottom. I'm going to roughly estimate where the middle is, and then halve each of those. What we have here is 10 intersections. Each of these intersections are going to end up being the places that we sew in and out of with our felt. The next step is going to be using your awl or similarly pointed object to poke the holes at the intersections on your piece of cardboard. I'm using a piece of cork underneath just so that I don't scratch up my table. With our smaller piece of sticky fabric, what we want to actually do is stick this to the center. This is where we have to do a little bit of paper surgery. But this is going to be the inside of the books, and it's going to actually cover up some of the edges of when we fold the outside fabric over the hardcover. So what we want to do is find the center of this piece of fabric paper stickiness and mark that. I'm going to draw the line through the center. If my pen will cooperate, it will not. Let's try this one. It's a little better. Now we know that our centerpiece is a 1/2 inch wide. So off of the center line, I'm going to draw a 1/4 inch on either side. What we want is to remove the paper from the middle and keep the paper on the sides, because we don't want these to lose their stickiness in the process of us doing some more steps. The way I think I'm going to do this is try to pull off the paper, if I can, from one corner, until I get to where I can cut off a little bit of this spine piece, stick it back down, and I'm just going to try to get my scissors under here to cut away this middle part. See that I'm not cutting the fabric, I'm just kind of sticking my scissors underneath the paper and pulling it up. And then we can go to the other side and cut right along this line as well. Sorry that the line is kind of hard to see. I tried to find a Sharpie. I have no clue where any of my Sharpies are right now. I'm just going to pull this away a little bit. What we're left with is the sides still have this protective layer, and then the inside is sticky. So we're going to go ahead and stick down our inner spine piece. Now, I do not consider myself to be a bookbinding expert in any sense of the term. If you're interested in actual bookbinding, I'll have some resources below for that. But in the meantime, I'll show you how I made this project specifically. So the next step is to sew your pieces of felt onto this. We're actually going to sew them to the top side so that it has a nice clean finish with the fabric. This is what's going to be stuck into our hard binding. But we actually need to draw some or cut some guidelines onto our felt, so it's a lot easier for us to figure out where we are sewing. So I'm just going to take a little snip along where the holes are. You could probably also use your awl here, but this just seems like a little quicker and easier. Okay, so now begins the actual part of sewing the felt onto the cardboard spine. I'm going to thread my needle, and I'm going to make a knot at this end, hopefully just so that the thread doesn't get pulled through temporarily while I am doing this first step. So we're going to start at the top hole on one of the sides, pull the thread through, and then pull it up through the next one. Here we're actually going to tie a knot. Probably as tight as you can to the cardboard piece. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go into the next hole down. And up through the next one, if I can find it. Nice. Go back to the middle hole. Thread through the fourth one, and then down into the fifth one. So what I'm doing here is kind of haphazardly, unfortunately. I'm adding all these loops to the back of the spine. What this is going to allow me to do is when I come back up, I can have something to loop my thread around to anchor it, and that'll make a little bit more sense very soon. So I've gone ahead and taken some snips and snipped my felt folded edge where the cross sections line up. This is going to help me guide my thread through. So flipping the whole piece over, you'll see that I have the needle at the bottom. So let's thread through the bottom hole of the felt. Then we're going to sew through the second hole from the bottom. Then we're going to guide it through our original hole. Or sorry, the hole into the cardboard. And this is where we're going to sew underneath the loop below and sew underneath the loop above. This means that our thread is anchored to both of these loops, so when we sew back down, it's not going to just pop out this hole. Okay, now we do the same for the next one. Anchoring the loop underneath and above. So at the end, we have just the one loop to anchor around. So I'm going to go underneath that thread, leaving a little loop, which I'm then going to sew through to create a knot. And I'm actually going to do this a couple times just to make sure it is strong. And I'm going to cut all of the extra threads off. So now what we have is one of the felt pages sewn to the spine. And you're going to see on the inside we have these 4 stitches from the 5 holes, and they're nice and even, and yeah, so now we're going to do that with the second page. Now there are a lot of probably cleaner ways you could attach your felt pages to the spine. You could probably actually sew this on machine if you wanted. I wanted to try out some different techniques, so do whatever works for you, really. But now we have the inner part of the book. And as you can see, kind of holding it up, mocking it out, there's plenty of room for needles to go into this needle book, unlike the last one, which is a little overflowing. Now that we've got what I consider to be the most difficult part of the project out of the way, let's get on to the hardcover. So we have our larger piece of sticky fabric. We have our two cover pieces. We have our spine, and we have our little spacer that we made. There, that makes more sense. So we can start assembling this. I'm going to start by peeling off the sticky backing of this new sticker fabric we've created. I keep my nails pretty short because I do lots of projects and long nails just kind of get in the way, but they'll be very handy in a time like this. There we go. Ooh, that is very sticky. Ooh, very, very sticky. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to find approximately the center of this and put down our spine piece. I've cut out this piece with extra seam allowance, or I guess not seam allowance, folding allowance in mind, which we may end up cutting off later, but I figure more is better than too little. This is where our spacer comes in mind. This spacer is 3/16 inches in width, and this is the space we want so that when our, oh, that's too sticky, so that when our book bends, it has plenty of wiggle room. So I'm going to try to stick down the spacer without sticking it forever. Then I'm going to use this to space out the pages. Oh my gosh, the stickiness is killing me. Okay. Then I'm hoping I can use my awl to lift this up. Yay, that worked just how I wanted it to. Okay, let's do the other side. Now you can see we have a lot of extra folding allowance on the outside of this, so we're gonna actually kind of cut this off, hopefully to be about ½ inch around. The sides look fine, but the top and bottom look like they have a little extra. Now, these look like sewing scissors. I use them as craft scissors. I have some really nice sewing scissors, so I promise I'm not committing a huge sewing sin by using these. As you can see, they're already a little chunky. I want to make nice mitered corners on when I fold this over, so I'm going to fold straight across, leaving about, I'm going to say maybe a 1/8 extra before we hit the edge of this cover. Just kind of eyeballing it. And I'm going to start by taking the corners and kind of rounding that 1/8 inch over it. I want to make sure that we don't have any cardboard sticking out, and this is what will hopefully prevent that. Then we can take the cover and fold it over. And it's nice and sticky and it just sticks right down, which is great because when I did the last version with glue, it was quite messy. That looks super profesh. Now you may remember this small piece of double sticky tape that we created earlier. What this is going to do is make this back into an entire sticky piece. So let's peel this paper off, stick it over our threads, and this will hopefully like keep our threads locked there, which would be a nice added benefit. We're going to actually start by sticking the center down onto the center of this. Now I want to keep this centered vertically as best as I can, because that will affect our final alignment. As you can see, once the pieces of the side fall down, they cover that extra folding allowance quite nicely. Okay, now we can peel off side by side and place that down. And we're done. Now you have a nice hardbound needle book, and let's try it out. Let's add some needles and make sure that it works. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't, but for funsies, for science. Perfect. You can add some ribbon on it to tie it closed if you'd really like to. I don't tend to need that, but you can also add like little clasps or other embellishments. This would be really pretty to have an embroidery on top as well. Now, as you can see, there's little threads and bits from the inside. If you used paper, you wouldn't have that issue. It actually would look nice to have paper on the inside and then fabric on the outside, but I'm just using scraps. All in all, the only thing I actually had to purchase specifically for this project was the sticky paper. Everything else I had in my stash. So this was a great little stash busting project for me, and super fun. So I hope you enjoyed the journey today of creating our brand new hardbound needle book. Bye!